I'm a writer. I've been writing since I was in middle school, and writing brings me solace. Writing this book, Wild and Precious Life, brought me solace. I'm many other things besides a writer. I'm a wife. I found love late in life, and I'm blessed with that. I don't know how I could have lived through this crisis without the love of my husband. I'm a daughter. I take care of my 94-year-old father. I'm his primary caregiver. I'm a sister, and I have family that's helped support me through my pain. And I'm a teacher. I taught science, I taught English, and I love that aha moment when you learn something new with a class full of kids. I am also an advocate for death with dignity. And my daughter, at age 29, died of a brain tumor, and she bravely chose not to let the tumor call the shots. She decided that she would not allow the tumor to take away her sight and hearing and speech and ability to think. She decided she would use physician-assisted death, and my husband and I supported her and moved to Oregon with her so that she could do this, although every fiber of my mother's being cried out, "Stay, stay with me." If you're to understand me and why I wrote this book, you must understand that above everything else, I am a mother. When I first felt her stir inside me, something changed. I became a different person, the same woman, but a mother. I'm Brittany's mother, first and foremost, always and forever. But before she died, she lived a wild and precious life. And that's what I've written about in this book. When you read this book, I hope it encourages you to look at your life and make sure that you're living a wild and precious life, because we only have one life to live. I'd like to read a portion of the book I wrote, and I want to set the scene for you. We were on a boat with a very bold captain, and it was only 4 months after Brittany's craniotomy, so she still had a scar on her head. And we were deciding that we were going to live those last months of her life with as much joy that we could. And on this boat, we had seen glaciers, blue, robin's egg blue glaciers, calving and breaking off, and we had heard the booming sound as they crashed into the water and floated towards us. And we had seen sea lions and whales and all kinds of wildlife. And we were on our way home, back to the port. And my daughter and I were holding hands across the table, thinking nothing of it. And that's where this scene picks up, in chapter 19 of Wild and Precious Life. Brittany and I conversed with various people, and it turned out that quite a few of them had thought we were a couple. We became friends as Brittany shared herself with this captive group of intrepid voyagers. There was a back and forth of humanity at a level that people don't usually reach. She spoke of her impending death with clear eyes and not a quiver in her voice. I saw complete strangers gazing at her lovely face, their heads nodding in understanding, their watering eyes giving away their instant feeling of intimacy with her. Brittany shared herself, although her head was beginning to pound from the sound of the engine. I think that death, whispering in her ear, as he did, gave Brittany the potential for immediate intimacy with strangers. She let down the barriers and allowed people to see her without her normal defenses. At precisely that same time, the tumor, death, and his infernal murmuring was making it hard for her to remain intimate with those she was closest to. She had started distancing from me. She was less able to tolerate my sadness, my tears, my feeling of loss. It was easier to be open with people who would go their way in a little while, who didn't cling and cry. The engine throttled down, and suddenly We heard a loud crash and water splashing on the observation windows. "We've arrived at a waterfall," Captain Steve said in his understated way. People were on their knees looking out the window. I took off running, Brittany close on my heels with the camera. The water pounded the deck of the boat. We were so close to the rock wall, it was terrifying. Anyone who's ever stood under a waterfall knows that rocks come with the water. Our captain was bringing on adventure. Brittany and I were laughing and screaming. "Who does this crazy shit?" she yelled over the noise. "Captain Steve does," I shouted back. We had barely sat down and the engines throttled up again and we were off. Captain Steve showed us black bears eating mussels and a pod of orcas, and something about the rhythmic huffing of the whales soothed me at a moment when I would take anything I could get. As the boat pulled into Juneau, Brittany laid her head on my shoulder. "This was the best day ever," she said. "I know you're looking forward to seeing Victoria, but nothing will beat this day." No, sweetie, there will never be another day in my life as exquisite and beautiful as this one. As Britt dozed on my shoulder, I thought about the myriad of emotions I'd just experienced. I'd never found more kindness in strangers, more love in their faces. I'd never seen sadness etch faces faster, as fellow travelers comprehended that my vivacious young daughter was going to move to Oregon to die so that she would not suffer the indignities her brain tumor held in store. I'd never seen Mother Nature in a more overflowing exhibition of her wonder, wildness, and power. I'd never felt such disappointment and sadness in the face of overwhelming evidence that mankind had altered the ebb and flow of ice on our planet. I'd never felt such oneness and love for my child as part of creation. I'd never felt time and fate pull her away from me more certainly than I did as I watched Brittany talk about the path that she planned to walk toward death. I had never felt such joy and anguish about our little lives. I'd never seen such a sharing of love and sorrow, hope and despair. On this beautiful day, on this brave little boat, I'd felt the highest highs and the lowest lows a mother could feel. And now my child, weary and with an aching head, seemed to disappear into her sickness on my shoulder. Passengers caught my eyes above her precious head and spoke volumes with a nod or dashing away a tear. No one left the boat unscathed by the beauty of that day. Thank you for listening to this portion of my book. And when you read the book, Wild and Precious, I hope you look at your own life and make sure that you're living a wild and precious one. Brittany's story might change the way you feel about things. She had that way with people.